The U.S. Congress is trying to make it so that in order for American weapons manufacturers to supply weapons to the U.S. military, they must also supply weapons to Israel by law.
Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show, everybody. Keaton and Russ from Due Dissidence here while Jimmy is on the road. All right, folks. So with everything going on, with all of the shock and horror of the past week, this slipped through the news here. James Lee is on the case. Pay attention, folks. While we were all distracted, the House just passed a bill to make it illegal for U.S. defense contractors to boycott Israel. Read that again. American weapons manufacturers will now be legally bound to keep arming Israel by order of Congress. WTF. You know, if there's one group of people I hate to see pushed around in this way, it's American weapons manufacturers. You know, I hate to see them bullied in this way. This really gets my blood boiling.
It's terrible.
Here's James Lee.
Distract us from in the last couple days? Well, it's this right here. The House of Representatives just passed a bill punishing, quote, politically motivated boycotts of Israel. Quote, in a first step towards a federal law punishing criticism of Israel, the House of Representatives on Wednesday, that was 9/11, mind you, passed a massive defense budget that would bar companies engaged in politically motivated boycotts of the country from Pentagon contracts. The bill would effectively ban contractors boycotting Israel from tapping most federal contract dollars, since more than half of the $755 billion in the U.S. government spent on contracts last year flowed through the Defense Department. All right, so in more plain English, the U.S. Congress is trying to make it so that in order for American weapons manufacturers to supply weapons to the U.S. military, they must also supply weapons to Israel by law. What the is that all about? I also just want to reiterate again that Israel had nothing to do with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Okay.
Yeah, that is so bizarre that, I mean, you talk about overcompensating for something, that you would tweet out a picture of yourself and Charlie Kirk with the Israeli flag in the background. I mean, talk about, you know, lady doth protest too much, man. I don't know.
You should have tweeted out that video of him at the baseball game after the assassination.
Yeah, doing the YMCA.
It looked like he was having a great time.
Yeah, right. That's his morning process.
Oh, that's right. I got to look sad. That's right.
That's right. The House just passed a bill punishing politically motivated boycotts of Israel. In a first step toward a federal law punishing criticism of Israel, the House of Representatives on Wednesday passed a massive defense budget that would bar companies engaged in politically motivated boycotts of the country from Pentagon contracts. The bill would effectively ban contractors boycotting Israel from tapping most federal contract dollars, since more than half of the $755 billion the U.S. government spent on contracts last year flowed through the Defense Department. That's now the War Department. I will have to issue that correction. It's 2025. Give it the times. The ban, the latest legislative attempt to target the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel's human rights violations, or BDS, would still have to pass the Senate. The upper chamber, well, not if Chuck Schumer has anything to say about it. The upper chamber was debating its own version of the budget bill on Thursday that does not include an anti-BDS provision. Critics predict a court challenge if the anti-boycott provision makes it into law. This amendment is really designed to shield Israel from any accountability by penalizing those who protest its violations of Palestinian human rights through boycotts, which should be protected by the First Amendment, said Hassan El-Tayyab, the legislative director for Middle East policy at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. The anti-BDS provision was spearheaded by Representative Lauren Boebert from Colorado, whose office did not respond to a request for comment. Boebert's measure received no discussion when it was approved by the House on a voice vote as part of a package of amendments to the budget bill Tuesday. The House went on to pass the full amended version of the National Defense Authorization Act on Wednesday night. The overall bill passed 237 to 196, with support from 214 Republicans and 17 Democrats. El-Tayyab said that passing the anti-boycott provision in such a rushed manner did a real disservice to the American people, especially people who were engaged in protesting and unfolding genocide going on in Gaza. Bills targeting the BDS movement have passed many state legislatures, of course, Some seek to bar people or companies supporting BDS from winning government contracts, leading critics of the laws to argue that they violate the First Amendment's guarantee of free speech by punishing political views. President Trump signed an executive order targeting the boycott movement during his first term in 2019, which he restored in January after his re-election. Pro-Palestine activists have been a major target of his ongoing crackdown on universities and immigrants. Existing federal law takes aim at companies who observe Arab countries' boycotts of Israel. Earlier this year, however, pro-Israel lawmakers sought to criminally penalize anyone who boycotted companies that the United Nations has identified as doing business in illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. That was the big boycott bill that was probably the scariest one of them all. And here's the kicker. The bill floundered, I'm assuming that was a typo, in the face of opposition from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and conservative activists. Now, here's where this becomes a very bitter thing. One of these conservative activists, as Blakely points out, was now the late Charlie Kirk. What's particularly sick about them sneaking that unconstitutional anti-boycott bill through using Charlie Kirk's death as a distraction is that back in May, when they tried to pass it the first time, Kirk tweeted against it. Of course, Zionist lunatic Mark Levin had a meltdown. So yes, this was the piece that the article mentions, the anti-boycott bill, which would prohibit ordinary people from participating in boycotts endorsed by international organizations, like, for example, the United Nations. So this was Charlie Kirk on May 4th of this year. Tomorrow, the House will vote on H.R. 867, a bill that will criminalize private boycotts of Israel, fines up to $1 million and prison time up to 20 years. Bills like this only create more anti-Semitism and play into growing narratives that Israel is running the U.S. government. In America, you are allowed to hold differing views. You are allowed to disagree and protest. We've allowed far too many people who hate America to move here from abroad, but the right to speak freely is the birthright of all Americans. This bill should not pass. Any Republican that votes for this bill will expose themselves. We will be watching very closely. That's Charlie Kirk in May, to which Mark Levin says, "You don't know what you're talking about, Charlie." The bill merely extends the Anti-Boycott Act of 2018 signed by President Trump to international organizations. Yes, I'm sure he knew that. Everybody knew that. Yes. What causes anti-Semitism is anti-Semites, bigots, Jew haters. They don't need excuses, as you state here. Your post is absurd. Yeah. Syrian Girl says they didn't even wait till his body was cold. Yeah, that is what makes this kind of extra scummy. Granted, it was not the exact same bill, but to pass an anti-BDS bill under the cover of the tragic, horrible murder of Charlie Kirk, when he was, to his credit, it's no secret, I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on much, but to his credit, he did oppose that boycott bill. And I think that, that activism, that pressure is probably a large part of what sank it. That got enough Republicans who were responsive to that faction of the base to vocalize their opposition to it. Massey voices opposition to it, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it didn't even make it to the floor. And so, yeah, just it makes it just extra scummy that they did this week for that reason.
Yeah, well, they're not going to waste an opportunity to push their agenda, just like they didn't after 9/11. Why
Right.
do you think they had the Patriot Act ready to go so quick? Because that was Dick Cheney's wish list that had been sitting at the bottom of a drawer since the Nixon administration. They had that written up, ready to go. As soon as 9/11 happened, boom, they brought it to Congress. Charlie Kirk, this happened. They know there's a lot of emotion. And when people are very emotional, they're very easy to manipulate. They're going to take this opportunity to try to push through a bunch of stuff that they think people might be distracted enough to let them get away with, that not only have nothing to do with Charlie Kirk, but that, as you see there, he actively opposed. And they'll try to use his name. Look what Netanyahu has done. trying to curl up to his memory when Max has been doing a lot of reporting. He just dropped another banger about how Charlie Kirk was starting to go kind of, assert that part, the kind of Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of American nationalism of, hey, why are we involved in this? Why do we allow these people to have this much power over our foreign policy? Now, we don't know what happened. I think to believe the story that's coming out of the White House right now, particularly with the developments with the manifesto that used to exist but doesn't exist, and other people are cooperating, he's not cooperating, and the gun that could be broken down and then put back together. If you believe what they're telling you about how this happened, I don't know what to tell you. It's pretty clearly some kind of cover up. It's very clearly, for whatever reason, we don't know for sure. We have our suspicions. They want to misdirect people away from what actually happened here. Now, you look at who had a motive. A lot of people are looking at Israel, ourselves included. There's good reason to believe that. What you can't deny is that there's some very solid reporting, and we can see the evidence in tweets like that. Remember, Charlie Kirk was a young guy, man. He was not an old guy set in his ways. There was a lot of room for him to evolve, and particularly given that his generational cohort among Republicans is extremely skeptical of the Zionist project, that he was going to go that way, and that was going to be a nightmare for him. He was not just another schmuck talking on a mic. He had a national organization that, if Charlie Kirk had turned around, and, let's not get it twisted. People have pointed out very recently he was denying that there was starvation in Gaza. I mean, he hadn't fully flipped, but he was starting to show some independence. And when you're talking about somebody that young, you don't know how that could go. And if he had gone that way, if Charlie Kirk had put the thumbs down on the Zionist project, that would have been a major, major tipping point within the entire right-wing coalition. Like, you couldn't have really, at that point, the Zionists among them would have been fringe. Like, they wouldn't have even represented or been able to represent themselves as the mainstream of the party. I don't think they're the mainstream of the party now, but that would have made it just completely unquestionable that they had been pushed to the margins.
Yeah, on the boycott score, there does seem to be some encouraging news. This bill is up for a hearing on Wednesday, so I don't think it's certain yet, but Sam Husseini reported it. He's pretty solid. That the Marco Rubio passport revocation powers for Israel critics has been stripped from this upcoming bill that they're going to be tabling on Wednesday. So, it seems, I mean, look, this is tied to the NDAA. It's a Defense Department thing. Ultimately, they got to get that money approved, right? The war machine must be fed. So this is probably one of those areas where you can jam it through because there's enough bipartisan support. But thankfully, knock on wood, for the time being, there seems to be barely enough opposition to these really just like draconian speech crackdown bills, to the point where they seem to be failing. Like Lawler's anti-boycott bill failed, largely thanks to the pressure of guys like Charlie Kirk and Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. There seems to be just enough of that in the Republican coalition, and just a small enough coalition. I mean, this is the other thing. You got to be grateful they only have a slim majority, because if they had a bigger majority, then these dissenters would be flooded out. But balance of power being what it is, there seems to be just barely enough opposition to the worst of these bills, which is a good sign, because 5 years ago there'd have been none. None.
Hey, the cost of everything is still out of control, and many of us are relying on credit cards to cover essentials. If that debt is piling up, you're not alone. Americans collectively owe over $1 trillion in credit card debt. You might have considered reaching out to my friends at American Financing, but hesitated because you don't want to give up your low mortgage rate. Well, there's good news. They've created the Smart Equity Loan. It's a solution designed to help you take control of your finances without touching your current mortgage. Unlike a HELOC, which can have varied interest rates, the Smart Equity Loan offers a fixed rate. That means one predictable monthly payment, giving you peace of mind. This loan allows you to leverage your equity in your home to pay off high interest debt, free up your cash flow, and keep your existing low mortgage rate intact. It only takes 10 minutes to get started with no upfront or hidden fees. Call American Financing today and start saving now. That's 888-804-0303. That's 888-804-0303. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Jimmy. Come see me on tour in Louisville, Fort Wayne, Hermosa Beach, Sacramento, San Francisco. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.